1. I was at a party in a flat where only students live, and at a certain time I was getting pretty intoxicated. I'm not sure how it started, but at some point I was making up with this girl, Emily, who lived on the same floor the party was at. We wanted some more privacy, and thus she was dragging me to her room, which had been seen by some other girls. I think for the story it's good to know that most people knew each other at this party. The girls who saw us were friends of Emily, and they all had another friend who I had hooked up with a while before this party. Anyway, we entered the bedroom, locked the door, and things were progressing to the point where we were no longer wearing clothes. The girls who spotted us thought Emily couldn't do this to their mutual friend, and they were banging on the bedroom door. We were pretty drunk, and the banging on the door combined with the screaming was kind of disturbing. In fact, Emily thought she should convince her friends that I was not in her room, so that they would leave and we could continue. She quickly put some clothes on, but obviously I had to hide, and the only place our drunk minds could think of was her closet. So while she was telling her friends to leave, I was hiding in the closet. I honestly believe they could still see my clothes on the floor, though. They soon left, and we were able to continue. About 10 minutes later, I think, they were back and we were getting annoyed. Once again, she opened the door to tell them to leave. This time I just hid under the blankets. She asked me to. They obviously knew Emily wasn't alone, but she thought she would just say it was someone else who was with her. The girls actually came in the room, and I heard them talking right beside me. One person actually sat down in the bed, but that might have been Emily as well, I never found out. I was just not giving a fuck, literally, and waiting for them to finally leave, which they eventually did. However, this is when things got weird. Before we went to sleep, I had to pee. Emily didn't want me to go to the toilet because then her friends would see me coming out of her bedroom. She suggested I use some sort of bucket she had in her room. So I was peeing in a bucket in her bedroom, which was really strange to me. I remember thinking, why am I even doing this? I was honestly happy that I could sleep after that. In the middle of the night, I woke up. When I noticed she was moving around, I was half asleep and not really sure if I was seeing things right, but it seemed as if she was peeing next to the bed. I'm not sure if she realized it, or maybe she thought the bucket was there or something. All I know is she was still very drunk and I just fell back asleep. And the next morning the sun arose and we were both waking up. I just wanted to go home ASAP and got out of bed to search for my clothes. And then I see them, lying next to the bed on her side. I remember her waking up in the middle of the night, but I was hoping I had it all wrong. I did not. I picked up my clothes and they were wet. My jeans, shirt, and vest had been freaking pissed on. The only thing I thought of was the fact that I had to cycle home for 20 minutes, and I could not do that in my underwear only. So I just sucked it up, put on my wet clothes, cycled home, showered for about an hour while thinking, what the hell happened? Emily and I never spoke about the pissed-on clothes. I think she was too drunk to remember, and I just found it way too awkward to tell her. 2. In 2013, I saw a video on YouTube. It was a how to freeze cola. What would happen in the video is they'd open a bottle of Coke fresh from a freezer, and it'd instantly turn itself into an ice slurry. At this time, my dad used to buy 24 packs of Pepsi Max cans, and I wanted to give this a try. A quick science lesson. A factory-sealed Coke or any carbonated drink comes pressurized. This means there is already some pressure inside it. When the cap is taken off, that pressure is released, and the pressure goes down. And as the pressure goes down, so does the temperature. The liquid wants to freeze, it just needs some excitement, such as opening the bottle or giving it a little shake. So when I open the Coke can, the drink should drop below zero and instantly turn itself to ice. I tried this, I think, twice. The first time, nothing happened. I just had a cool can of Pepsi. The second time I tried, I shook the can and stuck it in the freezer for what I think was 3 hours. I took it out and noticed the can seemed to bulge. I didn't think anything of it. I said goodbye to my dad from the kitchen as he was heading out, and my finger pierced the lid of the can. Suddenly, my dad heard me let out a yelp of shock. I was covered in Pepsi. The ceiling was covered in Pepsi. The walls, the clock, the cupboard, the window, the floor, the sink. I looked like someone had shot a shotgun blast of Pepsi at me. My dad comes into the kitchen, sees the mess, and confused, he asks me perplexed, "What did you do?" So I gave him a simplified version. He laughs and tells me, "You're not doing that again, and clean this up." So what did I do wrong? I found out afterwards that the water inside a can of Pepsi expands, and it becomes greater than what the can was designed to hold. The pressure causes the can to become strained, and can cause them to explode. When I opened up that can, it released the pressure all right. I've told my friends this story, and I like to call that the time I was violently assaulted by Pepsi. Please be wary of things you find in how-to videos on YouTube. Many of them are really how-don'ts. 3. This took place 3 days ago. I had moved back into my parents' house for the summer, as I'm helping with the family business for the season and needed a place to stay at. Now I planned on staying in my old bedroom, which happens to be right across my parents' bedroom. The bedroom is super small, and if I wanted to watch a movie or something, I'd have to do it on my laptop, sitting on my bed. So the time is around 3 a.m., and my stubborn brain doesn't want me to sleep early since the day after I had no work. So I decided to watch 1 or 2 episodes of BCS to pass the time and then try sleeping again. One thing about me is that whenever I watch anything that is not safe for work, I always have to eat something. Good thing for me, I just bought a pack of Doritos earlier that day, so everything was great. As I was pouring the Doritos in a bowl, I recalled a time when me and a friend tried to prank some other friends of ours by putting Carolina Reaper powder into some oregano-flavored chips. For some reason, we had completely ignored the chips, so we decided to try them ourselves to see how bad it would be, but to our surprise, they were actually pretty good, so we ate them all. After that incident, I would put some of that spicy pepper powder on chips from time to time, since I love spicy food. Anyways, back to the original story. I was pouring the Doritos into a bowl, and I decided I wanted them extra spicy, so I grabbed my Carolina Reaper powder along and went upstairs to my bedroom. Now, even though it was around 3 a.m., it was super hot inside the house, so I had my air fan open, aimed straight at me, in the minimum power setting. As I sat in bed, my legs stretched and hanging from the small-sized bed, I held the bowl in front of me and started pouring some pepper powder onto my Doritos. However, as I was pouring, I noticed that I couldn't see anything fall into the nachos, so I kept pouring and pouring and pouring, thinking to myself, the powder jar is clogged. I tried shaking it aggressively until I finally started noticing some red particles sitting on top of the Doritos. Satisfied as I was, I started watching my show, having that burning sensation in my mouth as I was eating the Doritos. Suddenly, as the fan breeze was slapping my face with fresh relief, a realization came to mind. I paused the show, got up off the bed, only to find out that the reason I couldn't see any powder on my nachos wasn't that the jar was clogged, but because the fan was blowing the powder right as it was leaving the jar, spreading it all over my bed. As it was close to 4 a.m. my time, I couldn't use the vacuum cleaner, as it would wake up my parents, and I couldn't find any fresh bed sheets. You see, my mother keeps my stuff somewhere buried in the house, since this was my childhood bedroom that I visit only in summers, and the sheets from my bed and everything are tiny. And the bigger sheets are somewhere in my parents' bedroom, in which I was not planning on going as a ninja to avoid waking them. Therefore, I did the only thing that came to mind at the time. I started scooping the powder with my hands, throwing whatever I picked up in the trash bin. Obviously, I couldn't clean everything with just my bare hands, so there I stood, defeated. I then laid down and tried to sleep my problems away, accepting any consequences that may come. After a couple seconds, the effect of the powder kicked in. I started feeling an immense amount of heat all over my body, except for my private parts, thank God, and head. Thankfully, the burning was not intolerable. It was in fact not a bad sensation. However, it did make it harder for me to fall asleep. A couple minutes went by and eventually I did fall asleep, only to wake up itchy all over my body in the morning, and for some reason, I could see the veins in my abdomen for a couple of hours. I told my mother what happened, and she was laughing her ass off. 4. Today I fucked up but one time, but fucked up on multiple levels. I finally made it home, showered, processed my trauma, and now I'm ready to share my cautionary tale. Part 1. I shit myself. Big deal, right? Everyone does it, it's inevitable. Death, taxes, and shitting yourself are the 3 constants in life. Taxes you can predict. Death and diarrhea, you cannot. Today's story starts as do many like it. The suspect fart, the puckered trip to the relative safety of the local toilet, the lapse in judgment in between. In my case, the nearest toilet was about 50 yards away down a hall, through the break room, through the locker room, finally to the shitter room. I braced and started the track. 2. A warning from the beyond. The hallway is quiet. I don't see a soul until I open the break room door. The lights are off. In the glow of the TV, I make my way across the room. "Do not let the devil deceive you," the TV evangelist warns. I snicker at the coincidental admonishment and continue my track. As I near my final goal, I formulate a plan of action. We are in the end game now. I urgently need to pee by this point, but the need to fart has subsided. I decide to try to piss in the urinal before I sit down to test the suspicious fart. As I pull my dick through the front of the boxers, it hit me. I made a terrible error in judgment. It was too late to contain the fart. I pinch as hard as I can, waddle to the toilet, dick in hand. I somehow manage to pull my pants and boxers down without pissing everywhere. As I begin to crouch, some abominable cross between a waterfall and a cannon leaves me. Thankfully, that makes the toilet. I take a deep breath and count my blessings. The floor is intact. The toilet seat doesn't seem wet. Good signs that mean minimal cleanup or evidence. I look down at my underwear to survey the sum of all fears. It was indeed a shart. A large shart, steamy, thick, wet. Toxic ass gravy, the splotch of a dollar bill. Somehow, it had spread horizontally rather than vertically. I begin to wipe and discover that it spread horizontally across my posterior as well. How does this happen? Does it under pressure momentarily travel at a greater velocity than when asked to toilet seat? It seems like a feasible explanation, but I don't have time to contemplate fluid dynamics. I must begin the arduous task of wiping it up with one-ply toilet paper. I choked back tears and I woefully recalled the warning from the TV evangelist. "Do not let the devil deceive you." I was confident I could piss first. I was wrong. I was deceived. My hubris was my downfall. Part 3. The Karma. The next 30 minutes of my ordeal were spent cleaning and flushing. 4 flushes, spaced equally throughout the ordeal, ensured there would be no evidence. Evidence? No. The underwear. I had blocked from my consciousness the existence of the soiled underwear still sitting around my ankles, like cruel spandex blend shackles. I weigh my options. A. Untie my work boots, remove the underwear, go commando to mop the sink and wash them out. Pros: underwear is salvaged. Cons: in addition to completely removing and replacing my shoes and pants from my lower half, I would have to smuggle wet, recently soiled underwear out the bathroom and figure out a way to transport said underwear home. Every minute I spent in the bathroom increased my risk of discovery. I would need to rely on luck and skill, but today my faith in both was shaken. B. Discard. I could simply throw the boxers away. Pros: easy. Cons: I will still need to remove and redress my lower half in a less than immaculate public bathroom environment. Also, there is only one small wastebasket in the bathroom. Oh no. Recent events flood back to memory. 2 weeks ago, someone emptied the waste bin from the bathroom into the industrial-sized garbage can in the locker room. On top of the combined garbage was revealed a pair of orange boxers. I took great pride in pointing out that one of our colleagues must have shit themselves. The act was soon pinned to one coworker that didn't show up to the break room at lunch. He went home to change his pants. I took much amusement from making the accusation, and my fellow worker was a recipient of much undue abuse and condolences. Now the shit was on the other cheek. I was now that co-worker. Discovery was not an option. I could not be found out. I briefly contemplated blaming the same worker for a repeat mishap, but alas, he was on vacation. Option C. I would do the unthinkable. I would smuggle the soiled underwear off the premises on my person. I had no other option. I again turned to the one ply, both my greatest enemy and only ally in this ordeal. Tore a long piece and folded, then again, and again, and again. I folded the TP enough times to create Damascus steel. I placed a makeshift pad over the remaining stain on my boxers, and pulled them up. I placed folded paper towels between the offensive article of clothing and my still intact pants. After washing my hands, I then wiped my lower back with deodorant to hopefully mask any scent. As a last line of defense, I planned to claim that I farted if anyone mentioned a smell. It was 2 shameful hours between this event and the eventual freedom of my shift end. It was noted as we stood in line at the time clock that someone stinks. I shit my pants, I declared. Little did they suspect the truth of my statement. My greatest triumph is also my deepest shame. I can tell no one, except to you, faceless names. This confession means nothing. 5. When I was in middle school, my family's favorite pastime was browsing around its stores. During one of our outings to the mall, my friend and I went our separate ways from my family and ended up in a clothing store. We had fun looking at all the things we couldn't afford and decided to try a few on. The store was relatively busy, so my friend and I ended up in dressing rooms far apart from one another. Little did I know I would shortly be in a desperate fight for my life. I tried on the first couple of garments with no problems. It was upon getting to the last shirt that my fate would soon be sealed. Unlike the other garments, this one was made with a much less stretchy material. As I pulled the shirt over my head, I realized it was going to be a very tight fit around my shoulders and bust. For some reason, I decided to disregard this fact and continue to squeeze myself into the shirt anyway. After I managed to get the shirt on, I finally realized, wow, this shirt is kinda tight. No biggie, I'll just take it off and move along with my happy life. Nope. Forget all your hopes and dreams, you are forever stuck in this prison. My arms could barely move. What was I supposed to do? There was no way I could get myself out of the shirt. Meekly, I called out for my friend, but my desperate pleas fell on deaf ears. Thought of leaving my den of shame and entering into a busy store combined with a constricting garment left me on the verge of hyperventilating. Adrenaline then coursed through my veins as I entered survival mode. It was kill or be killed, and I would not let this shirt be the death of me. Attempting to not gain any attention, I slowly began to hulk my way out of the shirt. Little by little, the fabric gave out, and with every tear I was allowed more air into my lungs. This newfound hope lit a fire in me, and I tore my way through the rest of the shirt, freeing myself from certain death. I proudly looked down at the crumpled remains of my defeated foe and spotted something odd. As I recognized the strange device on the back of the shirt, a silent tear dropped from the zipper's eye. The zipper was staring me square in the eyes and begging for an explanation that I could not provide. My short-lived relief turned into terror. How could I be so cruel? How could I be so dumb? I needed to escape the scene of the crime. Neither I nor my family had the money to buy this shirt, and I really didn't want to explain my crime to an employee. Thankfully, the dressing room was not occupied by a worker, so I balled up the shirt, threw it into a corner, said a little prayer, and beat cheeks back to the car. I just waited in the parking lot until everyone came back out. When asked what was up, I hung my head and kept my mouth shut. I stayed silent, not for fear of having to pay for my mistake, but in fear of admitting to my depraved act of ignorant savagery. Rest in peace's sweet, undersized blouse. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Embarrassing Stories, episode 94. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you have a story yourself you'd like to share, please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. and you can find that in the description of every video. It's also on the screen right now. See? Before you go, if you could also boop the like button, I would appreciate it. Okay, let's see. No special shout-outs today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: best pair of shoes you've ever owned? I'm going to say it was a pair of Converse I had a few years back. Genuinely just one of the most comfortable things I've ever put on my feet. The annoying thing is, I've bought other pairs of Converse since then, even the same type, which is annoying. So let me know, totally not looking for shoe brand recommendations. What are the best thing you've ever put on your feet? Leave your answer in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.